Welcome to AI Rapid Fire session where we decode how AI is shaping industries, leadership, and future of work. So today's conversation is especially powerful because we're exploring AI not just as a technology shift, but as a human transformation shift. So organizations nowadays they're deploying AI to automate onboarding, streamline recruitment, enable self-service, and also empower the managers and reduce administrative burden. So there are a lot of platforms in the market that are actually modernizing for AI for HR, workforce experiences, and for simplifying hiring workflows to handling employee queries 24/7. But there is a real question: what happens to the culture, trust, governance, and leadership when AI becomes part of the employee experience? So is AI just a productivity tool for HR, or is it fundamentally reshaping how organizations engage, develop, and retain the talent? So to help us unpack this, I'm joined with Amy Wang, a senior HR and people operations executive, who brings deep expertise in talent strategy, organization effectiveness, and human-centered governance in the age of AI. So, Amy, if you could please introduce to our audience, then we can dive deep into the actual rapid fire.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for having me today. So my name is Amy Wang, and I work with organizations on human-centered AI adoption across HR and people operations. So my background is really a combination of talent strategy, shared services, organizational transformation across many industries like manufacturing, automotive, healthcare, higher education, in a variety of roles in IT, operations, procurement, and of course, HR. And in all these industries, I've come across helping leaders through automation, how changes engagement, governance, and building workforce trust.
Right.
So I'm actually really interested in making sure that AI reduces noise so people can focus on growth, leadership, and meaningful work, not just efficiency.
Excellent. I mean, we have a very good background, and so let's dive into the rapid fire. So it will be like 10 questions or maybe 15 questions. It's mainly focusing on the actual trends in the AI and people should use AI in the current situation or how should they use it. We'll just cover a couple of topics. So the first topic I'm going to talk about is the core bottleneck. So the modern HR teams are really overwhelmed with manual workflows, employee queries or onboarding tasks and several recruitment coordinations. From your experience, so what is truly holding HR teams back today?
You know, I don't think it's the volume of work alone, it's the fragmentation, right? HR is still operating across so many disconnected systems, unclear ownership, inconsistent processes, and a multitude of data sources, right? So AI can help improve efficiency, but if that foundation's messy, it just scales mess faster, right? And so I
Right.
think the real constraint is lacking clarity in workflows, decision rights, and data. And in some of the strategic AI work that I've been involved in with leaders and organizations, this comes up constantly.
Mm-hmm.
The technology is not the first barrier, it's alignment and process maturity.
Understand. So there's such a clear diagnosis. So you're basically saying the constraint is not the effort, it's capability and fragmented systems. So let's build on that. Next one is talking about employees self-service. There's a lot of shift in the employee self-service nowadays. AI agents now handle PTO requests, benefit questions, document retrieval, policy guidance. So does employee self-service AI increase empowerment or it will risk reducing human connection?
I think both are possible. Self service removes friction and gives employees more control, which is a good thing. But everything becomes transactional and people stop feeling seen, right? And the goal is not fewer human moments, it's better human moments. And I think AI should handle repeatable questions so HR can actually show up where empathy and judgment matter, right? And so this becomes especially real in frontline environments where employees rely on text-based or mobile communications to access policies, benefits, or even call-offs and schedule changes, right? And so access improves quickly, but connection, I think, still has to be the most intentional thing.
I mean, love that balance. So efficiency without losing humanity, right? So it's not a self-service versus connection. It's basically designing self-service with a trust, right? So down to the next question, recruitment automation. So AI promises to simplify recruitment through screening, scheduling, candidate engagement. So where should HR draw the line between automation and human judgment?
So I think automation should support decisions, not make them, right? Screening and scheduling are ideal for AI. Assessing potential, motivation, cultural contribution still needs to stay with a human. Hiring
Mhm.
isn't about just capability. It should be about trajectory, and the algorithms struggle to evaluate that fully. I think, the leaders I work with who are exploring AI in hiring are realizing quickly that efficiency cannot come at the expense of judgment.
Okay, got it. I mean, that's a basically strong line to draw, right? So automation can speed up the process, but the decision still needs to be human accountability, right? So especially when the impact is really personal, right? So okay, so move on to the next one. So AI-enabled onboarding. So AI can automate in role-based onboarding journeys and milestone, nudges, sending notification reminders. But what part of onboarding must always remain deeply human?
I think it's the belonging, right? The first manager conversation, the first team integration, and the clarity around purpose can't be automated, right? You can automate steps, but you can't automate feeling like you're welcomed, you're valued, and you're safe asking questions, right? So when onboarding becomes a checklist and only a checklist, I think retention suffers. You're not building loyalty. And in strategic AI learning environments, leaders are often recognizing that onboarding is less about information delivery, but more about identity and connection. I think that's really the key.
Got it. So exactly. So onboarding is more than tasks, right? So it's basically belonging. And AI can guide the steps, but humans create the actual welcome message or the greetings, right? So okay, sounds good. So moving on to the next one. So it's more about employee or manager self-service, right? So we talked about employees, how HR can be able to self-service, but with AI enabling managers to handle the approvals, team insights or performance, and also the HR workflows, directly. So does this really elevate the managerial effectiveness, or will it increase the decision fatigue?
I think, it elevates strong managers and overwhelms the unprepared ones, right? So AI will put more decisions closer to the front line, which is really powerful. But
Mhm.
I think managers still need training to lead. They need to learn how to lead, not just approve workflows. And I think that's really important. And the biggest risk is inconsistent decisions across teams and lacking interpersonal skills, right? And I think this is really shows up quickly when new tools are introduced, access to insights are increased, but capability to interpret and act on them has to be built on intentionality. People need to understand how to interact.
Understand. So that's basically practical, reality check, right? So if you don't design it right, so we shift the admin burden to managers, but if you do, we can unlock the better and faster decisions, right? So
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely.
Okay, so moving on to the admin controls and governance. I mean, I get this question a lot when I talk to the leaders, when we are going for the implementation across, the HR teams at the enterprises. So yeah, for HR platforms, there are a lot of platforms in the market provide centralized admin controls, analytics and policy automation. So in your view, who should own the AI governance and HR, right? From people operations, risk, or the executive team?
I think it has to be a shared ownership, right? People ops understands employee experience and culture. Risk understands compliance exposure. Executives will set the accountability and direction. But if one group owns it alone, I think governance becomes either too restrictive or too loose. And you want everyone's skin in the game, right? You want everybody to have a part of it and be aligned. And in the strategic AI programs that I'm part of, governance becomes the turning point between thoughtful adoption and really reactive deployment. And so this is why it's so important to have alignment across.
Understand. Okay, so moving on to the employee trust. Uh, so when employees know AI is handling HR interactions, this is very interesting. So what is the fastest way organizations accidentally erode the trust?
I think when employees feel like they're being watched instead of supported, AI shows up as surveillance, right? And trust drops really quickly. Transparency matters. People need to know what's being used, why it exists, and how it benefits them. Otherwise, silence will create lots of suspicion and people make up their own stories, right? And I think this is especially visible in communication platforms that interact directly with employees. The tone and the intent matter as much as the technology.
Right. I mean, such an important warning, right? So trust does not break from AI. So it breaks from surprises, secrecy, and inconsistency. So that's a powerful point. So moving on to the next one, data and bias. So AI systems really, I mean, they rely heavily on employee data. How should HR leaders think about transparency, consent, bias mitigation in the workforce AI?
I think it needs to start with honesty. No AI system is neutral, right? It reflects the data it is trained on, and leaders should explain how decisions are informed, where humans intervene, and how bias is monitored. Consent and explainability matter more than any type of perfection, right? So I think one of the biggest insights from strategic AI education that I work with is how quickly trust increases when leaders are open about their limitations and how their purpose is, not just the capabilities, because you want to bring people along. I think that's the most important part of this.
It's spot on. So transparent and consent are not the nice to have, but they are actually foundational, right? So, and the bias mitigation has to be continuous and not just a one-time checkbox.
Absolutely.
Moving on to the next one, employee growth and career pathing. So AI can personalize career paths and recommend learning opportunities. So do you see AI as a career accelerator, or could it unintentionally box the employee into such some kind of algorithmic labels?
You know, excuse me, I think it can be both, right? I think AI can surface opportunities employees would never see on their own. I think that's really powerful. But if leaders rely on recommendations blindly, people get boxed into patterns based on past roles or just their interpretation of their capabilities.
Hmm.
And I think career growth will still require human sponsorship, not just an algorithm making suggestions. The most forward-thinking organizations, should be treating AI as a guide, not as a decision maker, especially in development and mobility. You have to get to know the people. I think that's the way that you'll have the most advancement in opportunities.
Okay, I mean, so if I understand, AI can accelerate the growth, but we cannot let the recommendations become labels, basically, what you're saying. So people must stay bigger than the model actually. Okay, from the strategic lens, if HR leaders deploy AI tomorrow, so what is one strategic mindset they must adopt to ensure AI strengthens, not weakens, the human-centered culture?
I think treat AI as a culture decision, not just a technology decision, right? Every implementation changes how employees experience fairness, access, opportunities. And the question is not what we can automate, it's what kind of workplace are we building, right? Across advisory work that I've been doing in learning environments and HR tech adoption, the organizations that succeed anchor decisions in workforce decisions first. I think that is the most important.
Excellent. So that's a mindset shift right there, right? So AI should be culture amplifier, and HR has to lead with intention, not just the implementation, right? Okay. So moving on, what are organizations getting wrong about AI in HR right now?
I think most organizations are starting with tools instead of the work, right? They ask, what can we automate? What can we buy instead of what actually creates value for employees and managers? When AI gets layered into broken processes, it amplifies confusion instead of solving
Yes.
it. The organizations doing this well start by redesigning the work, the decisions, the experience, understanding their data. Then they bring in AI.
Excellent. So absolutely. So many companies that we work with, they are treating AI like a tool rollout instead of trust and culture redesign. So they have to really redesign the workflows, that works along the side of the AI with a more human center, right? So the last question. So how is AI changing the role of HR itself?
I think HR is shifting from process ownership to decision architecture. Less time managing transactions, more time shaping how work flows, how managers lead, how employees navigate their growth. The role becomes less about administrative programs and more about designing systems where people and technology work together.
Excellent. Okay. So I have one closing question. So 5 years from now, what will distinguish organizations that used AI to elevate their workforce versus those that simply automate the tasks?
I think intention, right? Some organizations will use AI to remove noise so humans can focus on coaching, creativity, and better decision making. Others will use it mainly to cut costs and distance themselves from employees, right? So one will build capability, the other will build efficiency without any kind of loyalty. And I think, only one type will hold up over time.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you, Amy. And it was really an valuable session and valuable insights. I'm sure our audience would appreciate. So, if there is one takeaway from today, it is mainly AI can reduce HR friction, but the trust and transparency and the culture must be designed intentionally. And the winners won't be those who automate the most, but those who are actually use AI to elevate employee experiences while keeping the human judgment at the center. So, to everyone listening, thank you for joining this AI rapid fire session. If this episode sparks ideas or follow the series, and share it with the colleagues and send us your biggest HR and AI question. And until next time, so thank you so much and being part of this podcast with us, Amy.